Thank you. Representative Lewis, you recognized.
Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity. What I'm trying to understand is kind of what happened at Cypress Woods, and I'm just kind of getting more information and more detail because this looks like this is something new and brewing. And I think part of the whole discussion that we're having today is transparency, and I'd like to hopefully help the folks that are here today and the folks that are back in Poinciana that hopefully will get the message. What's happened in Cypress Woods? There's been a dissolution of the CFD. Whose hands is it in? Does it have any responsibility? Does the covenants of the HOA have any responsibility of Cypress Woods? I'll let you take it from there.
I was at the county commission hearing that Mr. Jolly was at, and the attorneys that also spoke were at. And to give you some history of it, in about April or so of this year, Mr. Jolly submitted a request to Osceola County to dissolve the CFD. And the original request was in the name of Association of Poinciana Village, the Master Association. One of the requirements for completing the dissolution of the CFD was a resolution that was approved by the APV Board of Directors. Now, there's 9 members of the board, so it would require a vote of the Board of Directors in order to receive approval. That was never brought up by Mr. Jolly to the Master Association. So there was no meeting to discuss it, and there was no vote by the APV. Instead, what Mr. Jolly did was he submitted a statement to Osceola County that Village 1, not APV, but that Village 1 would take over the maintenance responsibility for what was being handled by the CFD. And that's in the Osceola County public records, where he says that there was an actual Village 1 meeting and that the Board of Directors for Village 1 agreed to take on the responsibility for maintaining the Cypress Woods maintenance items. And so based upon that representation and based upon the signed letter that Mr. Jolly submitted swearing that there was a meeting and that their board approved it, the Osceola County the commission said, okay, we're going to go ahead and dissolve the CFD and we're going to appoint or direct that the Village 1 Association take responsibility for that. Unfortunately, that has not been clearly communicated to the residents of Cypress Woods. They believe that APV, or the Master Association, is supposed to be taking responsibility for this, and when they contact management, when they contact Mark or anybody else at First Service, they're being told for the first time, apparently, that it's Village 1 that agreed to take all this stuff on. And so we're referring it back to Village 1, of which Mr. Jolly is the president, to say he's the one that signed the statement that swears that there was a resolution approved by the Village 1 board to take care of this just in Village 1. And that's where the confusion lies, and we're continuing to get the request that the Master Association take care of this, even though under the actual commission board approved vote, it's Village 1 that was supposed to take that on.
Does Village 1 have the ability to collect fees and use them as they...
There was no, and they didn't come to us to talk about mechanisms or procedures for trying to take this on or to help them out or anything. It was just done, and then there was no attempt whatsoever to work through this. There was no attempt to go to the master board before this and say, hey, we're thinking about taking this on ourselves. We don't have the mechanisms or infrastructure in place to take this over, so could we work through this? We had the budget meeting, was yesterday, right? No presentation, no need, no request, no anything. So the master board approved the budget as it would normally approve the budget, with no special request by Village 1 to even seek assistance.
Okay, so it was still managed. The CFD was actually managed by the Master Association.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The CFD was managed by the Master Association, or was it, I mean, the funds were managed. I mean, you said
no,
you guys collected
the CFD is managed by the county, or was managed by the county. The CFD collected taxes, and they handled the accounts, and they were responsible for the maintenance of it.
Gotcha. So now are those funds still being collected by, or would they be, because we're about to get to that time of year, would those funds be still collected by the county?
Because of the dissolution, no. If there was no dissolution, then yes.
Okay.
I have a question.
You're recognized. I see.
So are the residents of Village 1 still required to pay their HOA dues?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Are the residents of Village 1 still required to pay the HOA dues?
Yes. Yes. Everyone's still required to pay their HOA dues. The HOA due amount does not include maintenance of what was being handled by the CFD, because that was chosen to be taken on not by the Master Association, but just by Village 1.
Okay, so each village has its individual agreement, I guess, if you will, of what's going to be required through the HOA association based on what's been voted on by the board of each of the different villages?
So to understand, each village has its own board of directors. It's a separate sub-association. So just like any other sub-association, if they try to contractually obligate themselves to do something, they're able to do it. In this circumstance, in agreeing with the county that Village 1 was going to take this on, they needed to make arrangements to create the processes and mechanisms to make this effective, and nothing was done to do that.
Representative, are you,
Well, I'll yield to Cumby and come back on that.
Representative Cumby, you're recognized.
Village 1 voted, and they had the right to vote to opt out of the CFD.
Because
No,
of
just yes or no, I don't need any more than that.
it is a yes.
Yes or yes. Does Village 1 have the right to opt out of the HOA and go their own way? If they can opt out of the CFD, why can't they opt out of the HOA?
They can't opt out of the HOA because they're contractually obligated to remain as part of the master association. The difference between opting out of the CFD and opting out of the HOA is that the county has a process for opting out of the CFD if the association that's being benefited by it, or whatever entity is being benefited by it, agrees to take over responsibility, and that's what happened in this case.
Did you are aware that they wanted to opt out of the CFD?
We found out a few days before the August 3rd meeting. I was actually hired on August 3rd specifically for the purpose of going to the county commission meeting, and that at the commission meeting I spoke because the original language in the proposal was for the master association to take over, but we saw that Mr. Jolly had made the change in request to have it be the Village 1 association. I represent the master.
I think you know the point I'm getting at. The train was on the track rolling when you got
It was there when I showed
to
up.
the station. Okay, it's
Yes,
all
sir.
coming together. Okay, all right.
Yes, sir.
You're off the hook.
Thank you.
Okay, and members, as you know, after dealing with this issue, which is not the bill that we're dealing with right now, I would recommend we consider that in our additional questions. You're recognized. Oh, you're recognized, Representative Cortez.
I just wanted to make a statement. So, in doing so, them getting on the CFD, aren't they entitled for your services because now they're still paying dues? Doesn't that, if I'm paying you dues, aren't you supposed to provide a service?
Different services.
Because they didn't have any amenities in the first place. So I don't see what's changing if they're just cutting lawns and just keeping trees and clean. So I don't see the difference from any other part of Poinciana if they're paying the same dues as everybody else and they don't have any amenities. And that's what she just stated.
So here's the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is that Village 1 takes it upon itself to take on this responsibility and then does not participate in the process for budgeting to where they're requesting these particular mechanisms to be put in place or to agree to an additional assessment to handle it, because these are additional costs that have been handled by the county just from their property taxes. And so just like any other association, if you want to change the budget and increase assessments to get additional services, then you need to come to the board that's making the decisions and present that to the board, and that wasn't done. So I agree with you. I agree that if the process had been followed, the assessments would have been collected and the master association could have agreed to do all this. But really it was just, let's have Village 1 take over this and then nothing. And that's basically what's happened.
So if they were to come back to you and ask for your help, you wouldn't entertain it? Instead of charging them, you're already charging them $252.
The county has to do that.
Oh, does the county has to do this? Because
Yeah,
this,
we have a county process. Yeah, the county has to agree to that.
You can't reinstitute the CFD.
I don't
well, I'm not reinstitute the CFD, just helping the constituents that live there through where the county already is supposed to help them out anyway with the taxes that are being taken out, plus your help with the $252 you're taking out from them. Because evidently the CFD was not in void because they didn't have any amenities. So it's just the same thing.
To be clear, the CFD was collecting taxes and they were providing services. And I can turn it over to Mark.
Cleaning right-of-ways?
They have their own amenities inside. I could provide the the board here in full what specifics which what they were, and the county do have all the tracks that the CFD is taking care of. Our responsibility is the storm drainage as a master association. But yes, there is a full list of all the responsibilities, extra responsibilities that the county took care of it through the extra assessment they were paying.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to give it, okay, yeah, you know me, I normally allow a ton of questions, but we are getting, the hour's getting late, so.
This is a quick question. It seemed from most of the public testimony we had early on, prior to the CFD issue, that they believe the majority of the ills could be fixed by expanding voting hours. So I know y'all can't make this decision on the spot, but would you be amenable to taking to the board the opportunity of expanding voting hours from 7 to 7, so therefore we don't have to pass legislation to that effect? Okay, thank you.
I'll get to that question, but Representative Cumbie, I know you had a little
I
question.
do this real quick. Who performed the work on behalf of the CFD?
They have their own vendors. They have different contractors doing landscaping inside there, so on and so forth. They have their own electricians and all that good
Then
stuff.
that question, who governs the CFD?
It was the county through 3 board members, residents, and I think the last participant here, Ms. Bailey, she was sitting in that board.
Okay, so the governing authority for the CFD was appointed by the county.
I think they go through an election as any other HOA, and they have 3 board members.
Okay?
Yes.
Then the CFD is not governed by the HOA board.
The CFD holds the money. It's a special district created by the county, and you have citizens sitting there giving instructions to the CFD in which direction they want to move. Like, for example, hiring their landscaping company, hiring their electricians to work with their community, with their assessments. Master Association takes care of the master common elements of the association.
So bear with me a minute, Senator Saba. The CFD and the HOA are separate entities. They have separate bank accounts. They have separate checking accounts.
Yes, sir. They have their own accounts. They have their checking accounts. So it's a different
It's not a part of FSR at all?
No.
FSR is completely separate from this?
Correct.
Okay, good enough.
Yes.
Thank you.
I had a quick question. You all don't allow for proxy voting or vote by mail right now, is that correct?
He's asking about proxy voting, and
It's not allowed right now, no.
right now, the bylaws don't call for that.
Has that ever been proposed to change it? Have you ever proposed to change it?
Well, we could talk to the boards and see what they do.
Since August 3rd, no, I haven't. Management's looked at it before, but it has not been brought to a vote by the board.
And has there been any intention by any member of the board to push such a reform?
As of now, I don't know.
We don't know. I mean, we have a board member present, but we don't have a full 9-member board.
Okay.
We have several
Thank you.
board members present.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And we're going to call back up briefly. I don't know if Mr. Peter Jolly or Ms. Geraldine Bailey wants to speak. I guess since, Mr. Jolly, since you were the one who filed the action with the county, you'd probably be the best to...
Yes.
So I saw you guys doing the dance over there. What's inaccurate that you wanted to respond to? We just need one of you because we're trying to get to the underlying bill after your last bit of testimony.
I became the president of the master board in February of 2015. I was the president of Village 1 September of 2014. Being the president of Village 1, Cypress Woods is part of Village 1. We have 692 homes in Cypress Woods. Village 1 is 5,600 homes. So I represent the entire village. The people of Cypress came to me and said they have a problem they've been trying to solve for 10 years, which is the CFD. And I asked them, what is the CFD? Common Facility District. What is it? What is the purpose? they're taking care of the common areas. Now, as president of the association, I checked to see what services were being performed. And when I checked the bylaws of the association, all the services that's being performed was already being performed by the APV. So there was a duplication of services. Now what APV did, they didn't perform the service, but they were still charging the people of Cypress Woods the $252 a year. Avatar created a CFD with the county whereby they charge the people of Cypress Woods only $250 a year on their taxes. So it was a very difficult thing for the people to solve. But it was very simple. Amendment 9, which was written, an agreement between the county and Avatar, said that once these people of Cypress would dissolve the CFD, all the responsibility will be taken care of by the APV. Now I want you guys to understand that the APV means Association of Poinciana Villages, which is 9 of them. All the services performed is divided among the 26,000 lots or homes. So you get a $252 a year. That amount is paid for all the services, all the common facilities, and all amenities in Poinciana. When I had a representation out here with the county commissioners, I showed them that the services were duplicated. And as a matter of fact, Mr. Maldonado, July 8th, 2015, sent a scope of work of services to the county before they dissolved the CFD. And as I can, if you can make copies, because it's, all the services here is part of the APV responsibility, the master board. That's what was dissolved. Now, Mr. Maldonado says he didn't know anything about that. That's a lie. Mr. Maldonado helped me draft the resolution for the APV, except when the council came on board, he changed it from APV to Association Poinciana Villages 1. He changed it to Village 1. I said, that's the way you want it to be? It's okay with me, because Village 1 is part of the APV, and you guys are responsible for all the amenities and all the services. That's where we stand.
Thank you, and that's very enlightening. I want to just talk about a matter of remedy and process. We're all very distraught about what happened with that particular issue, but keep in mind that we can't pass a law to fix that. This is a matter that would have to be brought to the courts, unfortunately. And so while we can deal with the voting rights issue, which is what we're here right now in the posture of doing, and this other issue, very serious issue has come up, I strongly urge you to talk to your counsel about this particular issue, because, again, we can't pass a law or even a local bill to fix this issue, even though we're obviously very concerned about it. And I only say that so that no one's here is misled into what we can and can't do. I know this stuff is very confusing, and obviously we're concerned, and I strongly urge you to take some action if you feel that it's been a concern. But I don't want anybody to be misled to think that we as a legislative delegation can pass a law to fix that when we can't. But I do think you all need to deal with this in the courts, and I suspect with your counsel here that that's something that's going on. With that, we're